Detective Ramon, thank you for joining me here today, Miss Anderson. Please state your name and occupation for the record. Cindy Anderson. I'm Cindy Anderson, and I'm one of the bartenders at the lobby bar. Detective Ramon, Miss Anderson, what was your first impression of Lulu Frank? Cindy Anderson, it's hard to describe. She's the sort of woman everyone wants to be when they get older. Detective Ramon, what does that mean? Please include specifics. Cindy Anderson, well, she's quite glamorous. She showed up in this big fur coat. I mean, the woman must be pushing 70, but she carries herself in a certain way that's quite intimidating. She doesn't seem old, though, if that makes sense. There's this classiness to her that I really love. Then again, I suppose you're not asking about looks. Are you wanting to know if I think she could have unalived someone? Detective Ramon, do you have any reason to believe Lulu Frank was involved in a man's unaliving this evening? Cindy Anderson, well, she was pissed the first day she arrived at the resort. She was convinced her husband was seeing another woman. I remember the conversation well because I was staring at the fur coat of hers and listening very intently. For a minute, I wanted to be like Lulu, but of course, I work 18 hours a day to keep my 6-month-old in diapers, and that's very glamorous it is. Detective Ramon, Lulu's husband, Mr. Pierce Banks, was seeing another woman. Are you certain that's what you heard? Cindy Anderson, I don't know for sure if he was or wasn't. Neither did Lulu, for that matter. Nothing was confirmed as far as I know, but do I think Lulu is capable of murder? Absolutely. Detective Ramon, what makes you say that? It's a bold statement, Miss Anderson, and not one I take lightly. Cindy Anderson, of course not, but she really loved her husband, you know. It was easy to see. Clear as day, and yet there was this other side to her that was, I don't know, cold, calculating. Her eyes are very intelligent. The thing is, I don't think she knew how to handle rejection. Love drives people to do strange things. Detective Ramon, remind me how you know Lulu Frank, please. Cindy Anderson, oh well, I don't really, but being a bartender means I double as a therapist. You wouldn't believe the things people tell me, especially during weddings. Weddings seem to bring out the worst in people, or at least that's the side of them I see. Detective Ramon, so you don't actually know Lulu? Cindy Anderson, no, but I've been bartending for 10 years. I know a thing or two. By the way, have they released the victim's name yet? I heard this head got so smashed up that his face was completely destroyed. Detective Ramon, thank you for your time, Miss Anderson. That'll be all. I'll take a mimosa, Lulu said to the startling young bartender. She thought the woman looked barely old enough to drink alcohol herself. Light on the orange juice. A mimosa? Pierce asked. For a nightcap? I told Mavis and Edna I'd have a drink for them, Lulu explained, resting a hand on her husband's as she thought fondly of her closest friends back in South Carolina. The two sisters were both unmarried old women who lived together and rarely left the comfort of their front porch, choosing instead to get their fill of adventure through Lulu's stories. I might as well get it out of the way early on. Mavis will be calling me any minute wondering what we've been up to so far. The woman is a gossip. Pierce nodded along with his wife, looking supremely distant as he had all evening. The pair had landed in California a few hours back, and after a quick nap, a shower, and refreshments, Lulu had convinced her husband to meander down to the bar for a drink before bed. It's good people watching, she said while she toweled her hair after her shower. All the wedding guests will be arriving. Aren't you curious to see who was invited? Not really. He had shrugged and looked longingly at the bed. It's family. How interesting can it be? I'd rather stay here and watch a movie. Pierce Banks was used to doing what Lulu wanted. He adored her, or at least he had when they'd first gotten married. These days, however, she caught him staring into space more than usual, distant, uninterested. It seemed the harder she fought to sustain their previously vigorous sex life, the less interested he was in maintaining it for her. Lulu had heard this happen with older adults, only she'd never considered herself one of them. Then again, she was barely on the right side of 70. Could she blame her husband for losing interest when there were women half Lulu's age who'd give their right foot to be with him? They watched a lot more movies these days, and Pierce always drifted off during the most climatic scenes. He was 74, a handsome 74, so Lulu tried to forgive him for an early bedtime, but that didn't help her anxiety over the feeling that her husband was gradually floating away, like a beach ball when, after a bit too much fun in the sand, it landed in the water and lazily bobbled out to the sea, lost forever. Honestly, I'd been like pulling teeth to get Pierce out of the room. He'd claimed to be exhausted from travel, not in the mood for an in-room massage or a bubble bath drawn by one of the innumerable resort staff specifically tasked to keep the guests pleased. Well, Lulu wasn't pleased. She sighed. It would have pleased Lulu to see more of the man she had married instead of his distant shell. She wanted the eye-twinkling laughter, his soft kisses and silly jokes, but she hadn't seen much of the man she'd fallen in love with over the last few months. And while she hated to admit it, Lulu recognized signs of a deteriorating relationship. Unfortunately, those niggling signs were hardly subtle any longer, and it was only Lulu's desperate desire to remain married to her husband that kept her family in a state of denial. She noticed the little white lies that didn't quite make sense. She just didn't want to believe them. So Lulu ignored Pierce's reference to late-night meetings when he claimed to be at the office and wasn't. Lulu was an excellent gossip, and she'd made great friends with Pierce's receptionist. She deliberately looked past the appointments he would schedule that couldn't be moved for any reason, but whose purpose remained a mystery to Lulu, and above all, she pretended not to notice the tiny black S notation in his planner that appeared 2 or 3 times a month, with no location attached, no time specified, and no further explanation as to what, or rather who, this S character could be. Lulu was staring down the deadline of her 5-year anniversary with Pierce, which would make for a record. Out of her 5 marriages, she had one last longer than 5 years, although her 2 unions with Anderson had collectively totaled 7 years, and she was determined to make it to the mark this time around. She had sincerely hoped this week-long getaway at a renowned resort on the coast of California would rekindle their romance. But the sort of truth Lulu only admitted to herself, while tears ran down her cheeks in the privacy of her own shower, was that she suspected her husband was getting ready to leave her, and that was impossible. Men didn't leave Lulu Frank, she left them. Lulu squeezed her husband's hand tighter, then released it when he didn't reciprocate. Pierce didn't seem inclined to speak, so Lulu took her time soaking in the relaxation bubbling around them. The entire venue had been set up to ease away stress, to enhance romance, to promote wellness. Cucumber and watermelon ice water sat in elegant pitchers on every spare surface, flanked by silver coffee and tea warmers with dainty little teacups. The spa and mini bars, of course, stocked only low-calorie plant-based sweeteners and raw, natural sugars, and none of the cheap yellow packets of Splenda found in every other resort. Lulu's keen gaze caught sight of a woman dressed in an all-pink pantsuit. As she ushered in an ice sculpture the shape of a dove, leaning toward Pierce, Lulu gently patted his hand and pointed out the Miranda Rosales. Mavis is going to die when she hears about this, Lulu said. That wedding planner cost $2,000 to get on the phone. Can you imagine spending money that much on a single day? Well, I suppose a week this time around. Did you see that letterboard with the itinerary out front? It's a bit military, how much the bride had scheduled. I feel like I was reporting for boot camp when we arrived. Pierce looked at his water glass without acknowledging Lulu's attempt to make him smile, which had her feeling ridiculously self-conscious. The original Pierce Banks would have humored her at least, smiling in amusement, chuckling good-naturedly. He wouldn't have ignored her entirely. Lulu watched her husband more carefully, wondering if he was thinking that in Lulu's case, it would have been 5 separate occasions she'd have needed to hire Miranda Rosales. 5 weddings to 4 different men, 4 failed marriages, and a 5th on the way. Lulu leaned back, disconcerted as she watched Pierce study the countertop. A resort manager popped open the front door, drawing Lulu's attention as the cool night breeze of California desert flitted through the lobby, pushing the scents of fat pink peonies and delicate white baby's breath to the far corners of every room. Lulu loved the romance. She thirsted for it, prayed even a droplet would rub off on her husband. "Here's your mimosa," the bartender said, sending the drink across the countertop to Lulu and startling her from the Riviera. "And you, sir?" Whiskey," Pierce said. "Rocks, top shelf." Lulu glanced at her mimosa, the drink a design worthy of a photo. The colors were expertly intertwined and adorned with beautiful sprig of berries and greenery. Even the beverages were amazing, and Pierce commented so were the prices. "What would you like to do while we're here?" Lulu rested her hand on Pierce's thigh. "What about a nice massage tomorrow?" Pierce raised his eyebrows in question and glanced over at his wife. "What was that?" "Maybe we can sign up for a jacuzzi treatment and ditch the god-awful itinerary. I think they pull the bath for you right in the room, but then they leave. It's been a while since we relaxed in a tub together and played hooky from all our responsibilities. Doesn't that sound nice?" "Sure, whatever you like." When she'd fallen in love with Pierce, they'd been so equal partners. They argued, they laughed, they joked, they made passionate, desperate love, they fought and made up. There'd been none of this demure, "Sure, dear," and "whatever you like." Lulu was a fighter, damn it. She wanted to be married to one too. "What's wrong with you?" she snapped finally, hoping to draw him out of his miserable funk and into some sort of conversation. She'd take a feisty argument over this lackadaisical attitude in front. She was hankering for an argument. "I feel like you don't listen to a thing I say anymore. Do you even want to be here with me?" Pierce looked at her, his brows lifting once again, this time in shock. He had inherited the unfair George Clooney gene that God seemed to only bestow on men, the one that made them look better as they aged. Still, Pierce was unique. His nose was a touch crooked, and his left eye squinted smaller than his right when he smiled. It was his smile, however, that melted her heart, and her heart was practically every woman he encountered. There was a cheeky happiness to it that matched the twinkle in his eye, and when he coupled with his tall, broad shoulders and the spattering of salt and pepper gray hair, the combination was mesmerizing. Pierce's imperfections made him perfect. I'm sorry, I'll be right back. Pierce stood and pushed his untouched whiskey across the bar and threw a 50 underneath it. With a single glance back at Lulu, he pressed the button for the elevator and stepped into it. Lulu gaped after him, holding her husband's gaze until the door severed their bond. Something had changed, something big, she thought, and he wasn't going to tell her what it is. He was simply going to slip away, and there was nothing she could do about it. Her heart felt as if it were crackling, slowly crumbling like an old terracotta pot where it had once held such beauty, a blooming tree of love and desire. Only 5 years later it become worn and grooved. Salt deposits stained the outside. The flowers blooming inside had disintegrated to dust. Soon enough it would shatter, the shards tossed unceremoniously into the garage. She gripped the bar for stability as a whoosh of breath left her body. When she inhaled again, she tasted fear and bile. Lulu didn't tread carefully on eggshells through their relationships. She loved fully, completely, and when love had run its course, she left it behind without a backward glance. There was only one problem. Her love for Pierce had not run its course. She'd even pondered if Pierce would be her last husband. She'd never particularly believed in soulmates, though Pierce had just about convinced her. But what good was it having a soulmate if he didn't love her back? Chapter 6. A baby's cry pierced Lulu's blear, melancholy musings as she wondered who had brought a baby to a bar. Sure, it was the lobby bar, and the cry was coming from the lounge area, but this is a 5-star relaxation resort, Lulu thought as she glanced behind her for the source of screeching. Surely there was 5-star soundproof child care somewhere around here. What a lovely child, Lulu said as the bartender topped up her mimosa with a bit of champagne. The young woman smiled fondly across the lobby, but was whisked away by her colleague before she could comment. Lulu spun on her delightfully comfortable bar stool and scanned the room for the source of the noise. Spotting a young mother with a baby clasped to her chest, Lulu studied her and waited to feel a twinge of remorse. Lulu had never heard the tick-tocking biological pull that so many of her female friends had felt in their late 20s, early 30s, and onward. It had simply never hit her. Such an adorable little one, Lulu murmured to nobody in particular as she tested another phase on for size, wanting to see if the words unearthed any latent feelings of longing from somewhere deep within. When nothing stirred, she tried again. So sweet. Excuse me? A woman 2 seats down was giving Lulu an odd look. Are you talking to me? Lulu turned to face the woman. A woman nearly half Lulu's age was watching her carefully. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm mumbling to myself. My name is Lulu. Emily. For a moment, Lulu was lost in her own thoughts as she sized up Emily. Lulu wasn't particularly envious of youth, but what she saw in Emily disappointed her. Lulu placed Emily in her late 30s, and when Lulu had been that age, she'd been thriving. Young and beautiful, desired and pursued, men had eaten from the palm of her hand, and Lulu had liked that feeling of being in control. But Emily somehow didn't appear to be at the peak of anything. She might have been pretty once upon a time, but now her lips were turned into a contemplative pout, and her gaze didn't hold contact for long. Her clothes didn't do a thing for her figure, and while her accessories weren't exactly cheap, they were just plain. Everything about Emily seemed a bit drab, as if she'd lost the will to try for the sparkle that belonged in a woman. A shame, if you ask Lulu. I'm sorry about that, Lulu said quickly. I was mumbling to myself. My husband ran upstairs to freshen up. She glanced over at Pierce's recently emptied seat. But if you're bored, you can slide over and join me for a drink until he returns. Sure, she said. I hate drinking alone. Like I said, I'm Lulu. She stuck out her hand for a shake. The woman had a cold grip and still didn't meet Lulu's eyes. What are you having? Is that a mimosa? Emily glanced at Lulu's glass. I started with the champagne on the plane, so I should probably stick with it. I'm not 18 anymore, and you know what they say about mixing alcohol. I don't know about what you're talking about, Lulu Dupain. I'm only just turned 21. Emily stared at Lulu for a long moment, that critical second in time where one stranger is supposed to determine whether the other stranger is joking a little bit psychotic. Finally, she cracked a small smile and then burst out laughing. I like your style, Lulu. The bartender peered with a smile. What can I get you ladies? I'm fine, but she will take a mimosa, Lulu said, patting the seat next to her and flicking a glance at Emily. Go on, scoot over onto Pierre's seat for now, so I'm not shouting across the bar. Hold the orange juice, will you? Emily muttered to the bartender. Thanks. Lulu smiled. What brings you here, Emily? To this monstrosity of a resort? Emily gestured around her, looping in the white gauzy fabrics dripping from the rafters, the sign sitting on every spare corner that had been adored when the bride and groom's initials outlined in hearts made with pearls. I'm here for the wedding. Seems to have taken over the place, don't you think? To Lulu, the resort was an extravagant oasis located in the California desert, a location chosen, according to Pierce, because of its exclusivity and reputation as the ultimate luxury spa. Whitney DeBlue and Arthur Banks absolutely couldn't get married in a normal fashion like everyone else. They needed opulence. And if their goal was over-the-top luxury, they'd certainly achieve it, with tiny portions of food that tasted like money and drinks more expensive than liquid gold. One couldn't walk into the space without going into debt. The very chandelier dripped bits of warm light onto the deep, heavy wooden bar top, meeting the flickering of Himalayan salt candles and the hiss of diffusers pushing out humid bits of twisted mist. Even the palm trees outside swayed in time with the soft, relaxing pump of music through the speakers, as if they, too, were part of the very core of the ambience so carefully crafted. While Emily didn't seem to approve of the resort choice, Lulu didn't mind it. Lulu's life had always been about luxury, marrying into money, divorcing with money. Of course, money wasn't everything. Marriage was about love and passion. If Lulu didn't believe in romance, she wouldn't have gotten married 5 times. I don't think it's so horrible, Lulu said. I read on the website that the resort staff leaves beautiful petite fours every night on the bedside table. How lovely. And these drinks? They could be featured on the cover of a magazine. Can I be honest? If you'd like. I hate weddings. Emily heaved a sigh. Seeing all of those old friends who aren't really friends anymore, figuring out the perfect gift, making small talk with strangers I'll never see again. Lulu gave a perfunctory smile. Do you consider this small talk? If so, can we sit here quietly? I won't be offended. Not you. Emily's cheeks flushed a rosy pink. I'm sorry, not thinking straight. I had a long travel day and I met a man on the plane. Somehow things are already complicated. Oh, man. Lulu shifted to get more comfortable in her seat and settled in for a long haul. Well, I'm always up for a good story, and I've been married 5 times, so if it's advice on men, maybe I can help. Studying the champagne bubbles as if they held the answers to her deepest questions. Then she added quickly, almost as an afterthought, but I'm not married, of course. Lulu sensed Emily was on the verge of spilling some of her secrets, the details closely secured against Emily's chest. But at the last second, she appeared to pull herself back from the ledge. Emily shook her head, obviously distracted, and plucked something from the purse she slung over Pierce's chair. I need an honest opinion. Emily ran her hands over a slim photo album in a gorgeous shade of rose. Is this a stupid idea as a wedding gift? Is it a photo album? I do love that shade of pink. Lulu leaned farther over and gently stroked her finger along the velvety exterior. Oh, you must be friends with the bride. College days? Emily gave a hesitant nod. We lived together for a while. There were 4 of us that were close. Though when I think back, I wonder how we ever got together. We were all so different. May I? Lulu waited for Emily's nod. When it came, she pulled the album close to her and flipped it to the first page. 4 young, pretty faces smiled gleefully back at her, all of them shoved on their Charlie Brown-style Christmas tree that looked as if it'd been pulled out of the dumpster and decorated with bits of leftover trash. It was charming in a funny sort of way. Well, it's obvious how the 4 of you got along, Lulu said, unable to keep the smile from her own face. Look at the fun you are all having. It's a different sort of fun before you have money, isn't it? You know, I married my first husband when he was a poor schmuck. My best memories of him are from before we went and got rich. Emily watched as Lulu flipped a few pages further into the album. Clearly, Emily had been struggling to come up with captions in the photos. The first 3 contained silly little quips written in a shaky hand, but they quickly trailed off to blank lines where loving words belong. Don't think about your notes so hard, Lulu encouraged. This is a great idea for a gift. I'm sure Whitney will love it, and it will be a great way to reconnect with your old friends. Maybe the other 2 can help come up with some of the captions. I doubt that, Emily said. I'm not on the best terms with either of them. College was a long time ago. Lily didn't make eye contact with Emily as she flipped to an image of 2 girls. Emily, one of them, and an unfamiliar woman beside her, and laughed out loud. What is happening here? Emily gained wearily. Halloween, our sophomore year, we went as a bra. It was Ginger's idea. It was a dare, I think, or maybe that was during the phase when she was protesting something for women's rights. I can't remember. Either way, I went along with her because that's what we did back then. Our other friends, Kate and Whitney, were too embarrassed to be seen with us until they'd finished the better part of a wine bottle. Then they came out dressed as a devil and an angel. The next page revealed another photo of Emily and Ginger, this time wearing swimsuits. The photo was so dark they were mere blobs of pasty white skin against a star-spattered night sky as they stood on the edge of a dock. Oh, this one, Emily exclaimed with the first hint of excitement she'd shown all evening. This was when we got Whitney to go skinny dipping for the first time. She was so nervous, poor thing. She'd only did it because Kate went with her. These 2 were attached at the hip. But Whitney's not in the photo, Lulu said gently. In fact, most of these are you and Ginger, and a few of the 4 of you. Right, Emily said. Kate and Whitney were inseparable, and so were me and Ginger. Sophomore year, we all shared a 4-bedroom apartment on campus, and that's when we all started hanging out. We spent so much time together over the next 3 years, I guess we didn't have a choice but to become friends. This one is sweet. Lulu stopped on a photo clearly taken in the library. Poor Whitney was face down with her head on one of the books in such a deep slumber that her mouth was cracked open. All-night study session? Emily snorted. Sweet. Yeah, right. That was the week of finals. Our school had one of those late-night pancake breakfasts to help us fuel up for exams. Whitney ate too much and passed out. Not a good idea when you have Kate and Ginger around. Lulu frowned in confusion. Why ever not? The explanation, Emily flipped a page and found an inappropriate piece of artwork drawn on Whitney's forehead. Even Lulu found it hard to hold back a smile at their naive immaturity. The girl's eyes squinted with suppressed giggles. I see what you mean, Emily promised me. If I happen to fall dead asleep after this next mimosa, do me a favor and shuffle me off to my room before your friends get here, will you? Emily laughed. You have my word, though I think we're all a little past that now. There's no outgrowing some things, Lulu said. Take it from me, a little youthfulness is always good. Maybe. Emily snapped her book closed, shuffled it back to her purse. I guess I'll finish that later. I should probably just write Whitney a check. Though it does seem a little odd giving her a book where she's not even in half the photos. Anyway, all those memories have me thinking I could use another drink. Lulu stifled her urge to raise an eyebrow, instead beckoned the bartender over and gestured for Emily's glass to be refilled. I normally don't like this, Emily explained. It's the college photos bringing me back, I guess. It's been a complicated sort of day. So you said this man, what is it about him that's making everything so difficult? Emily tapped her hand nervously against the bar counter. She glanced toward Lulu, then took a fortifying sip of her drink. The sex. Oh, Lulu licked her bottom lip and thought, yes, that does tend to complicate things. Is he married? God, I hope not. He told me he wasn't. He didn't have a ring on, but men have been known to lie before. Well, don't expect judgment from me, Lulu said. As long as you two are consenting adults, I don't see anything wrong with having a little fun on vacation. We all have our secrets, I suppose. Emily lifted her glass to her lips and raised an eyebrow, offering Lulu a half smile. I've told you mine. Lulu mused for a moment, unsure how to feel about offering her greatest fears on a platter. It felt like standing naked in front of a room full of staring strangers. Then again, there was something tempting about it, something freeing. For so long, Lily held her cards close to her chest. When she'd married her first husband, she'd been so young and so in love. Joe hadn't been rich, but that hadn't stopped Lulu from understanding a woman's place and power in society. After her relationship with Joe ended, she set her sights toward upward mobility and secured Anderson, a true catch in all senses of the word. From then on, Lulu had access to money, and that allowed her to slip easily behind a charade of furs and gowns, sparkling accessories, and high-end makeup products. She'd learned to smile a certain way, to tilt her head a certain angle when listening to men. She accumulated invitations to the most prestigious of events and learned how to survive among the elite. There was a specific walk Lulu now used when entering a room, and particular laugh she knew captivated men and women around her. Lulu's friends claimed she was polished, but Lulu saw it more as a form of camouflage. Her mother had always said Lulu wouldn't amount to much, but Lulu had known differently. She'd been convinced of it, and look at her now. The thought startled Lulu. Look at me now. Was she really as happy as she claimed to be? She had the furs and the home, the husband, but did she really have him? Lulu cast a glance at Emily, who ran an unpolished finger around the lip of her champagne flute. Maybe it would feel good to bear everything, or at least something. I really don't think. A minute ago, I told you I had sex with a stranger on an airplane, Emily interrupted. If you think what you got to say is bad, trust me, I've got worse. Lulu struggled to put this woman's dark confidence in context with the bubbly college student she'd seen in photos. And Lulu made a decision to trust her, at least for the night. I think my husband might be planning to leave me. Well, shit, Emily said. That's not good. No, Lily said, feeling the tremble of frustration burn to a boil in her chest. It might have stemmed from hurt, but it was spilled over into helpless, desperate anger. No, it's not good at all. Detective Ramon, Miss Frank, are you aware that a man was unalive this evening at Serenity Spa and Resort? Lulu Frank, we've already gone over this, Detective. I'm well aware a man is unalive. Seeing as I unalived him, I swung a wine bottle at his head and cracked it wide open. There was a lot of blood. Detective Ramon, was it an accident? Lulu Frank, does it sound like that was an accident? Detective Ramon, was everyone else involved? Lulu Frank, no. It was only me out on the patio. Detective Ramon, were there other people with you at the time of the incident, even if not directly involved? Lulu Frank, I've already told you this, so if you didn't hear me the first time, listen back to the recording. But since we don't have time for that, I'll tell you again that the answer is no. It was just the two of us, and then I unalived him. Detective Ramon. Mrs. DeBlue, thank you for taking time out of your wedding weekend to speak with me. I assume you know what this is about. Whitney DeBlue. The man who unalived, I imagine, but I don't understand what I have to do with it. I mean, I was in the middle of a rehearsal dinner when it happened. Ask anyone. Detective Ramon, you're not under any suspicion, Miss DeBlue, but I would like to talk to you about several of our wedding guests, specifically Lulu Frank, Ginger Adler, Emily Brown, and Kate Cross. You invited these women, yes? Well, Lulu was a family invite. I've met her once or twice in passing. She's married to my fiancé's uncle, but I can't tell you much more than that about her. The others, yes, I invited them. I lived with Ginger, Emily, and Kate during college. Detective Ramon, can you please describe the nature of the relationship between the four of you? Whitney DeBlue, I don't understand the question. I already told you. We were friends in college. We don't keep in contact much anymore, but I thought it would be fun to get together after all this time. Detective Ramon, how often do you keep in touch with these women? Whitney DeBlue, Kate and I exchange a few texts a year maybe, but gosh, I haven't seen her in a person probably 5 years. As for Ginger, we do the Christmas card thing now and again. I did end up calling her before she left for the trip, so let her know Emily would be attending the ceremony also. I don't keep in touch much with Emily, but it would have been rude not to invite her if I invited the other two. We were a foursome back in our day. Detective Ramon, why would Ginger care if Emily was in attendance at the wedding? Whitney DeBlue, there was little tiff between those two back in college, and I wanted to make sure they were over it. Detective Ramon, and was Ginger over this little tiff? Whitney DeBlue, I don't know. Detective, would you be over it if you caught your best friend wrapped around the person you loved? Lulu watched the bartender as she dropped off a glass of water in front of Emily and gave both women a fleeting, polite smile before she was called over by another customer. Lulu studied the young woman as she flitted into patrons, wondering if she herself might have accepted a job as a bartender. Had she not married a series of rich husbands? After all, it wasn't as if Lulu had many markable skills in the workforce, but Lulu wasn't sure her feet could have handled the long shifts standing behind a counter, nor would she have stood for disenchanting hourly rate that came with the hands of such labor, though she probably could have scored great tips 30 years ago. Lulu just hadn't been all that interested in working. Cheers! Emily raised her champagne glass, looking eager to have a sip. Two new friends. Lulu tapped her glass to Emily's, wondering when the last time was that she'd made a friend, a real friend. Mavis and Edna went back 50 years in their friendships with Lulu, but the rest of Lulu's acquaintances were exactly that, acquaintances. Well, you look at that. Lulu gave a faux appalled shake of her head as she nodded toward the front doors to the resort. That's the third ice sculpture that's been wheeled in here this evening. Rumors that Whitney hired Miranda Rosales to plan the ceremony. I've heard it cost $2,000 to get her on the plane. I suppose that's fitting for Whitney. How do you mean? Lulu asked. At Emily's curious expression, she continued, I'm recently married into the family. I've only met the bride once or twice. My husband, Pierce Banks, is an uncle to the groom. Oh, well, Whitney's always been interested in. Emily studied the mahogany bar and thought, I'm trying to figure out how to say this nicely. I think we passed that point of being polite, Lulu coaxed easily. I won't tell a soul. The only thing I'll say is that Whitney has always been interested in things she qualifies as better than her. Emily said in a rush, I'm not saying it's true, but Kate and Whitney, you saw them in the photos, had a strange sort of friendship throughout college. Almost parasitic, if you know what I mean. Kate came from the wealthy parents and always had money for things that Whitney didn't. Plus, have you met Kate yet? Lulu shook her head. Well, you'll know her when you see her. Emily paused, looking lost in thought. She's got a certain presence about her. Polished, classy, always gets her way. You'll know what I mean soon enough. Anyway, it always seemed to me there was a bit of competition between the two girls, one that Whitney could never quite win. I suppose we all need each other in some way, Lulu said, thinking of her own friends back in South Carolina. Friendships are strange. They came in all shapes and sizes. The more Lulu considered it, Edna Mavis, Lulu's closet female companions, had latched onto Lulu because she was their eyes and ears in the social circuit. She brought a spice to our lives, breaking up the monotony of the last few decades in which the sisters had spent their time raising a porch full of dead plants and one blind cat. In turn, Lulu adored regaling them with her often exaggerated table parties and vacations and gossip from the hair salon. They gasped and applauded in all the right places, and because they were both nearing their 80s. Lulu still felt like a spring chicken amongst her friends. It was a win-win for all. That's true, Emily agreed. All I meant is that this wedding, well, it feels like Whitney is trying to, I don't know, forget I mentioned it. You feel like all of this, Lulu spoke softly, pausing the gesture at the dimly lit sanctuary, is Whitney's way of showing Kate and the rest of us that she's made it in the world? More or less, Emily admitted. I mean, I'm happy for her, really I am, and I think she and Kate genuinely care about each other, or at least they did. Well, there's no better way to marry into money than snag a Banks. Lulu gave a tickling laugh. I should know. How long have you been married? Oh, now, we've opened a can of worms, Lulu said, glancing over her shoulder to make sure Pierce was nowhere to be seen. It'll be 5 years this weekend with Pierce, though as I mentioned, I've been married several times before. Lulu didn't like to talk about her past in front of Pierce. It felt so classless compared to his impeccable history, a thrilling career as a trial lawyer, a gorgeous house and fat retirement account, no annoying failed marriages following him around. His only baggage was the fact that he'd lasted the better part of 73 years as a single man. When Edna and Mavis had heard the news of Lulu's engagement, however, they warned her about him. A man single for that long is too good to be true, they said. There's no such thing as a perfect husband. Lulu wondered if they were right. Did you ever have a wedding like this one? No, see, I don't particularly love the fanfare, Lulu said. I love love, romance and passion and desire. Weddings are an entirely different matter. Have you been married before? It's complicated, Emily said. Are things complicated with your ex-husbands? Not with two of them. They're dead. I've tried things twice with Anderson. Third time would not be a charm, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, Emily said, not appearing sorry in the slightest. How'd they die? Sorry, Emily said. You can tell me the fuck off whenever you like. It's complicated, Lulu finally said. Shall we have another drink? Let's. After requesting a bottle of champagne from the bartender along with a side order of chili cheese fries, was it really girl talk without a generous helping of junk food? Lulu and Emily gave another toast to new friends, then launched into a professional form of people watching. The only two women of a certain age could manage with success. Look at them. Sickening, isn't it? Emily pointed out a young 20-something couple as they strode toward the front desk in itsy-bitsy swimsuits, wrapped around each other as they giggled to the front desk clerk. They're so in love now, but just wait, it never lasts. Lulu fell silent at Emily's observation. Emily recoiled. Oh shit, I'm sorry, I didn't think. Is your husband? I don't know if he's truly leaving me, Lulu said, but I think he might be interested in another woman. Do you have proof? Not exactly, but we'll call it women's intuition. Lulu reached for her glass, surprised. She opened up once again to this stranger. Not what she told Emily was entirely true. Lulu did have some proof, but it wasn't enough. The appointments, the meetings, the mysterious S. After a fortifying sip of champagne, she sighed. I do hope that if he's planning to leave me, he does it quickly. It's so embarrassing to be hanging on by a thread. Lulu was normally the one encouraging others to share, sympathizing with breakups and heartaches and losses with a bit of savory relish on the side, as if Lulu herself would never be affected by such tragedies. Why this Emily character had drawn out her only real fear, she had no clue. Why don't you go ask him, Emily asked, and then winced. A child's cry pierced the thrum of soft lounge music pulsing through the bar area. What is that awful sound? The baby? Lulu turned her attention to the wails, which had resumed after a brief respite. Still intent to try on her soothing words for sighs, Lulu smiled at Emily. Precious, don't you think? Not really. Emily snapped in a way that had Lulu sighing in relief. It's cracking my head in half. I can't breathe. Can someone shut that baby up? Lulu's breath came in a startled, giggly gulp. Even she didn't feel that strongly about children one way or another. Emily, on the other hand, you don't have any children, Lulu asked. There was a stony silence that followed, and Lulu wondered if she'd misread the situation, but the woman had already confided in Lulu about having sex with a stranger. Lulu couldn't understand how simple a question about children could be the imaginary line in the sand. No, Emily said. Finally, I don't. Me neither, Lulu gave a hearty nod. I never wanted them, always thought something was wrong with me. What about you? Emily cleared her throat and downed her glass of champagne. I don't want them anymore. Lulu realized she was dancing so close to the veil Emily kept pulled tightly across her features. She made a mental note, then treaded lightly away on the subject of children and resumed watching as guests entered the lobby and checked in at the front desk. There was now a red carpet being rolled out through the entryway and piles upon piles of white roses being carried in and placed in bundles on either side of the hall to create a living, breathing, flowery canopy. Emily only pinched her head in response. I'm sorry to cut things short, but I think it's time I retired to my room. I have a splitting headache. Lulu glanced over her shoulder. That crying baby probably isn't helping. Emily gave a wan smile. It's not the most relaxing sound I've ever heard. Well, get some rest. I should head out too, Lulu said, albeit reluctantly. She wanted to find Pierce and curl against him in bed. She wanted to read a trashy magazine while he pondered World War II or some other infinity impossible to grasp subject, and she wanted to drift off to sleep together. Actually, do you mind waiting here for a minute? Lulu asked. I'd like to check on my husband, but if he comes back before I return, I don't want him to think I've left. My phone's upstairs, so... No problem. Emily waved her off halfway through. I don't mind at all. Can I get you another drink for the trouble? Lulu eyed the almost empty champagne bottle. Lulu had more than 2 sips of her glass. I'll have my husband catch the tab when he comes down. That's the benefit of marrying an old wealthy man who has the manners that date back to the Great Depression. No, I think I'm good for the night, Emily said in that slightly dreary tone. You go on and I'll wait here. Lulu made her way to the elevator and hit the button for her floor. As the doors closed, she watched while Emily gestured to the bartender for another round. Secrets, Lulu thought. Secrets are no fun. Speaking of secrets, Lulu wondered where her husband had gotten to while she befriended the curious Emily. Had he come up to make a phone call to the ever-mysterious S? Lulu hated having such paranoid thoughts about her husband. It weighed on her. Made her feel guilty for harboring suspicions of Pierce when she hadn't scrounged up the confidence to broach the subject head-on with him. Sure, she dropped hints that she knew he hadn't been at the office when he claimed to have been, and she tiptoed around the fact that she wished Pierce would confide in her about those appointments he couldn't miss. But he hadn't offered additional information, and she hadn't pressed forth further. Until Lulu demanded the answers from Pierce's mouth, she preferred to hold out hope that maybe there was a logical explanation for everything, including the money that had been transferred out of their account in large sums over the past few months. Lulu wasn't stupid, and she was nothing if not honest. That's exactly why she'd been divorced 4 times. She refused to pretend things were just fine. Thank you very much, and when they were not, and things were not fine. As she reached her floor, she sidestepped out of the elevator and made her way down the hall, practicing what she'd say if she found Pierce in some sort of compromising position in her room. Would she beg him to stay, demand a divorce, and storm out? Emily would be downstairs ready to have a drink with her and wallow if need be. If nothing else, that was a small comfort to Lulu. Halfway down the hall, her husband stepped out of the resort room and looked furtively around. Furtive, such a covert word. Lulu was too old to be sneaking around and dealing with furtive glances from her 74-year-old husband. He glanced curiously down the hall toward Lulu, but he didn't appear to see her. Quite possibly because Lulu had ducked behind a plant, her heart pounding. She hadn't felt this way since she'd played kick the can as a knobby-kneed girl, and Lulu was so nervous she felt the sudden urge to use the bathroom. After a few moments of gesturing around, Pierce turned the opposite way from Lulu and headed toward the elevator at the other end of the staircase. Lulu breathed a sigh of relief and waited until the bell dinged, the doors closed, and her husband began the descent to the lobby. Letting herself into the room, Lulu flipped on the lights to reveal a carefully prepared suite that spread no luxury. She scanned the area, her gaze flickering past a large whirlpool tub outfitted with the best bath salts money could buy. and over the chamomile pillow she'd ordered earlier in the evening. A king-size bed with fat, perfectly proportioned mattress and fresh-scented, hyperallergenic pillows waited for a love-struck couple to slide between the sheets, to make gentle, passionate love before drifting off to sleep beneath the lavender-scented diffuser. One of the resort staff must have snuck in while Lulu had been at the bar and started the diffuser, clicked on the television and changed it to relaxing advertisement channel flickering on repeat through the resort amenities. The staff had also deposited the promised tray of sweets Lulu had been looking forward to sampling with Pierce by her side, along with a complimentary welcome basket from the bride and groom. In it, Lulu spotted a bottle of wine adorned with a custom label stating its contents had been created by a vintner in Napa specifically for the upcoming nuptials. Lulu pushed the chocolates away, her stomach churning with frustration and champagne. The service here was impeccable. It's my husband who flawed, Lulu thought on a second thought, grabbing one of the expensive petite fours from the tray beside the bed and shoving it unceremoniously between her lips. On another occasion, she might have frowned over the gold-dusted surface and the way the delicate chocolate melted between her lips, but not this evening. Swallowing the sour taste treat, she began piecing together Pierce's footsteps, dragging her gaze over the surface of the combined belongings. That was the thing about marriages. They accumulated a lot of stuff. Always a headache to split stuff up, which was why Lily had begun tossing everything after divorce and starting fresh, problem solved. Pierce kept his things very neat and orderly. Unfortunately for him, it made snooping very easy for Lulu, and she quickly spotted the paperback book on the bed. She crept across the room and noted the title, something about war, of course, resting on the bed with its spine cracked open. It hadn't been there when they'd left. Lulu picked up the book, giving a sniff at the title, War. That's what Pierce would get if he planned on leaving her. Or maybe she'd leave him first and, oh God, there it was, her worst nightmare. The note fluttered to the bed, a crumpled piece of loose leaf paper with writing that was undoubtedly Pierce. Even worse, the man was on an oath. He dated the piece of paper. There was absolutely no mistaking the fact Pierce had come upstairs specifically to write this sordid little letter. Lulu's hands trembled as she began to read the sweet words surely written for her. Oh no. So we are at the end of chapter 7.